In the city of Benin, where red dust clung stubbornly to shoes and the echoes of honking buses competed with street hawkers' chants, lived a man called Chike Ofili. He was 35 years old, a graduate of sociology from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Chike was not poor, at least not in the way people counted poverty. He worked at a small but stable logistic company, earned enough to rent a modest 2-room apartment, and could afford the conveniences of modern life. Gas cooker, electric fan, a used car, even a small washing machine if he wanted. But he didn't want it. Chike was different. From his youth, there was something in him that leaned towards hardship, as though comfort was poison. People joked behind his back that he was the ambassador of suffering, a man who wore discomfort like a badge of honor. He would smile at the title, nod proudly, and carry as though the name were an award pinned to his chest. Take for instance his apartment. Most of his colleagues who earned half his salary had inverter systems humming in their flats, keeping the lights alive when NEPA usually played its game. Chike, he kept candles, tall white ones, stacked in the corner like soldiers ready for war. When asked why he did not get an inverter, he would chuckle. Why should I spend all that money when candlelight can teach me patience? Let the heat train my body. Comfort weakens a man. Even his clothes betrayed this strange philosophy. He could afford to visit boutique, buy clean shirts, but instead, he frequented Bendel Select Markets at Ring Road. Shirts with faded collars, trousers one size too big, shoes that had suffered another man's journey before him. Those were his trophies. If you advise him otherwise, he would wave his hand dismissively and say, "Why should I buy brand new when second-hand is the best?" But the truth was that Chike was no sadist. He didn't love pain in the way a wound loves infection. He loved process, the raw, unpolished part of life that others tried to shorten. If there was an easy way, Chike would find the longer one. If there was a shortcut, he would walk the full road, blistering his feet in the process. His neighbors observed this every day. Take for instance, the matter of laundry. In his compound, most tenants had washing machine humming on Saturday mornings. The sound of clothes spinning, water gurgling, and rinsed fabric hanging neatly on lines was part of the weekend reading. But Chike, he squatted by his plastic basin, soap in hand, scrubbing like a man locked in battle. His palms would turn raw, his knuckles bruised, but he would not relent. If someone suggested, "Oga Chike, buy machine now, life go easy for you so," he would only laugh and say, "Easy life is the enemy of discipline. My sweat must touch every shirt I wear," he would reply, grinning as though he were sharing wisdom. This was not just eccentricity, it was his identity. To understand Chike, one must look at his roots. He was born in Abo, Delta State, the last son in a family of 6. His father, Paofili, was a retired school principal, a stern man who believed that every child must taste the harshness of life if they were to grow into responsible adults. Paofili's house was a training ground in hardship. Electricity was rationed. Even when the current flowed, the old man would switch it off and command his children to read by lantern. "Let your eyes know struggle," he would say. Food was measured, not because there wasn't enough, but because a stomach that knows hunger respects food. Chike's elder siblings rebelled against this upbringing. Once they became adults, they ran to the opposite extreme, chasing comfort with ferocity. They bought new cars, installed air conditioners, and filled their homes with gadgets. They said their father had denied them pleasure in their youth, so they would indulge now. But Chike, He absorbed his father's philosophy like dry sponge drinking water. The discipline, the denial, the insistence on hard parts that sank deep into his bones. By the time he reached university, suffering was no longer just a condition, it was a lifestyle. At Nsukka, while other students formed queues at Mama Caro's canteen for steaming jollof rice and fried chicken, Chike was in his room boiling garri water on a rusty stove. He would eat eba with watery okra soup for 3 days straight and still smile. He refused to join his friends when they pooled money to hire a generator for the hostel block. Instead, he embraced darkness. Darkness trains the mind, he would say, sitting under a candle flame, scribbling notes until the wax collapsed. Even during exams, when classmates paid typists to format their assignments neatly, Chike would handwrite his with pen, every page aching with sweat. If the lecturer frowned at the scrawls, he shrugged. What is life without struggle? His nickname, Ambassador of Suffering, actually began at Nsukka. It started as mockery. Friends would jeer, "Ambassador, how market?" whenever they saw him walking instead of taking keke napep or fetching water with buckets while others used borehole pumps. But Chike owned the name, wore it proudly until it became less an insult and more of a title. After graduation, he carried his creed into adulthood. His job at Eze Logistics paid just enough for comfort, but comfort was Chike's sworn enemy. When the company offered him a small car allowance, suggesting he buy a second-hand Toyota Corolla for his delivery round, Chike rejected it. Instead, he bought a used bicycle. Imagine a grown man in shirt sleeves paddling under the harsh Benin sun while colleagues zoomed past in air-conditioned vehicles. People pointed, laughed, even shook their heads in pity. But Chike would smile through the sweat streaming down his forehead. This bicycle is my companion. It teaches me resilience. Let my legs know suffering. And so, his legend grew. His neighbors, his colleagues, even his church members, everyone knew Chike as the man who loved suffering. Children whispered about him. Traders laughed. Taxi drivers joked when they saw him biking uphill. But Chike remained unfazed. The modern Nigerian setting around him only highlighted his oddity. In a world where people hustle to climb out of discomfort, buy comfort in small packages, instant noodles, Uber rides, imported perfumes, Chike seemed to sprint in the opposite direction. His neighbors in Upper Sapomba often gathered in the evenings to gist about him. That man fit get money o, but he dey live like one hunter for bush, Madam Ebo would say, fanning herself on her balcony. Another would add, "Na wow, person wey suppose dey enjoy small small, dey punish himself." But always there was someone who said, "Leave am, na im choice, maybe na discipline." And discipline was indeed what Chike believed he was mastering. Life in Benin was not easy for anybody, but for Chike, it was intentionally harder. He carved hardship into his daily routine, the way others carved comfort. At Eze Logistics, where he worked as an operations officer, his colleagues respected his intelligence, but frowned at his stubbornness. Chike was a brilliant worker. He had a sharp mind for planning deliveries, tracing delays, and solving customers' complaints. If the company gave him a laptop, he preferred to scribble on paper first, draw lines, tally marks, arrows pointing in all directions. His table was a small chaos of notebooks and ink pens, while his colleagues clicked away effortlessly on Excel sheets. One afternoon, during a staff meeting, his manager, Mrs. Osaige, announced, "Chike, you are one of our best staff, but why must you always resist tools that make the work easier? Look, we have tracking software, automatic reports, even template emails. Why must you write each report by hand? Chike smiled faintly. Madam, it is in the process of writing by hand that I understand the weight of the work. If software writes for me, how will I feel the burden? The room bursted into small laughter. His colleagues whispered, Ambassador has spoken again. But Mrs. Osaige frowned. Chike, you are running a modern company, not a monastery. Please learn to adapt. Adaptation, however, was not in his dictionary. Chike's philosophy also infected his personal relationships. He once courted a lady named Amaka, a soft-spoken bank cashier he met during a transaction. At first, she admired his simplicity, how he never tried to impress with flashy gadgets or clothes. He is real, she told her friends, not like all those fake Lagos boys. But as weeks passed, she began to see the extremity of his ways. When she visited his apartment and offered to help him buy a microwave, he refused. What for? The firewood stove in the backyard works fine. She stared in disbelief. Firewood? In this city? When you have a gas cylinder inside? Chike only shrugged. Gas is too easy. Firewood brings out the taste in food. Amaka tried to be patient, but the day he insisted they trek from Ring Road to New Benin for the discipline of the body, she broke out. Chike, life is already hard in Nigeria. Why add suffering? Are you not tired? He looked at her with gentle pity and said, Amaka, suffering is the true path of strength. If you cannot walk with me in hardship, you cannot walk with me at all. That was the end. She blocked his number, left without turning back. It wasn't the first time. Women entered his life, attracted by his intelligence and quiet confidence, but left when they realized he was married, not to them, but to suffering. By now, the community has fully branded him. Children chanted, Ambassador of Suffering, when he biked past. Market women laughed, pointing at him when he bargained for spoiled tomatoes instead of fresh ones. Even bus conductors used him for jokes. Ambassador, you go enter bus today or you go trek reach airport road. They would shout laughing. Chike never felt insulted. Instead, he nodded in approval as though each jest confirmed his identity. One rainy season, his philosophy faced its first serious test. The company was expanding deliveries across Edo State, and Mrs. Osaige offered Chike a company motorcycle for easier mobility. It was a practical gift meant to ease his commute and improve productivity. But Chike declined. No need. My bicycle is faithful. Mrs. Osaige pressed her palms to her face. Chike, be reasonable. You can't ride a bicycle to Ekpoma and Awuchi. These are long distances. But he insisted. He paddled through rain and sun, through potholes and dust. By the time he arrived at destinations, drenched and exhausted, customers shook their heads. Young man, why punish yourself? His refusal began to affect work. Deliveries delayed, reports piled, clients complained. Eventually, Mrs. Osaige had to issue a warning letter. You are not in this company to prove a point. You are here to deliver results, she said sternly. Chike nodded, but deep down, he felt misunderstood. To him, suffering was not foolishness. It was integrity. Among his university friends, Chike was both admired and pitied. His closest friend, Kunle, a tech entrepreneur in Lagos, often tried to reason with him. Chike, my brother, you dey carry this your philosophy too far. Life no balance already, yet you dey add extra weight. See me, I dey chop soft life small small, and still my hustle dey pay. Chike would smile, sipping water from a plastic sachet, while Kunle gulped malt. Kunle, you may enjoy today, But one day, life will test you, and only those trained in hardship will endure. Kule shook his head. But my guy, now who survive today, they endure tomorrow. You fit dey train yourself into early grave o. Their conversations often ended this way. Kule warning, Chike insisting. Both men laughing but neither convincing the other. By his late 30s, Chike's lifestyle began to show cracks. His body, though lean, carried invisible fatigue. His knees ached from endless cycling. His back complained from bending over buckets of laundry. He rarely visited hospitals. He believed pain was a teacher. But his neighbors noticed the tremor in his hands, the heaviness in his steps. Still he smiled. Still he said, "A man must know suffering." But beneath the smile, shadows began to gather. By the time Chike turned 38, the legend of ambassador of suffering has spread wider than he ever imagined. What began as teasing had now become his identity, his reputation. But behind the reputation, cracks widened. His elder sister, Ngozi, came to visit from Abuja one hot December afternoon. She stepped out of her Toyota Highlander in front of his modest compound and shook her head immediately. "Chike, how can you be living like this in 2025? She asked, fanning herself as they entered his candlelit sitting room. The room was bare. Old plastic chairs, a wobbly table, curtains sewn from faded Ankara fabric. A portable fan stood in the corner, silent because there was no electricity. Ngozi looked around and said, "You are a graduate. You have a good job. But see this place. No inverter, no fridge, no TV. Why do you choose to suffer like this?" Chike smiled calmly. "Ngozi, do not mistake simplicity for suffering. These things you see as lack, I see as strength. I live free from the chains of comfort." Ngozi sighed deeply. "Chains? Brother, comfort is not a chain. It is a blessing. You sound just like Papa, but see how his streetness drove all of us away. Must you inherit only hardship?" Their conversation ended with tension. Ngozi pressed some money into his palm before leaving, but Chike quietly slipped it into her handbag while she wasn't looking. He didn't want her pity. At work, things grew worse. The company had secured big contracts, and efficiency was everything. Chike's refusal to use software or motorbikes became a liability. One morning, Mrs. Osage summoned him. "Chike, I like you. You are loyal and hardworking. But this your lifestyle is affecting us. Last week, you delayed a delivery to Ekpoma because you insisted on riding bicycle in the rain. The client nearly cancelled our contract." Chike adjusted his old tie, unbothered. "Madam, rain builds resilience. What is delay compared to discipline?" Mrs. Osage's voice hardened. "Discipline does not pay bills, Chike. Clients don't care if you sweat blood. They care about results. If you cannot adapt, we will let you go." For the first time, Chike felt the sting of consequence. Yet he nodded slowly. "If it is suffering to lose this job, then let me suffer. I cannot betray my parts." 2 weeks later, he was dismissed. Unemployment gave Chike more time for his practices. He trekked further distance, washed clothes by hand, cooked only with firewood, but the strain on his body grew heavier. His knees swelled after long bicycle rides. His chest tightened at night. Neighbors noticed. "Ambassador, go hospital," Madam Ebo urged one evening. He chuckled. "Hospital is for those who fear pain. My body is my hospital." But pain was not a patient teacher. It grew harsher, robbing him of sleep. Sometimes he coughed blood into his handkerchief, but dismissed it as purging of weakness. Around this time, Kule visited from Lagos. He was not thriving, running a tech firm with staff and offices. He had not forgotten his friend and came with an offer. Chike, I get position for you in Lagos. Operations manager. Salary go fit you well. I know you are disciplined and that's what my team needs. Just relocate. Enjoy small comfort and work smart. Chike shook his head gently and said, Kule, you mean well. But Lagos life is soaked in ease. People drive everywhere, eat fast food, press phone all day. That life is poison. I must walk the hard road. Kunle's eyes filled with frustration. Hard road where they lead to where? My brother, open your eye, yo. You dey waste your strength. One day this your stubborn suffering go bury you. But Chike only smiled faintly. If suffering buries me, then let my grave be a monument. Kule left in anger because he couldn't convince him. Slowly, people began to pull away. Neighbors stopped inviting him to gatherings because he would refuse bottled drinks, asking instead of plain water in tiny cup. Women avoided him because he dismissed their attempts at care. Former colleagues rarely called. In the compound, only the children still found him fascinating. They would gather as he repaired his bicycle, chanting, "Ambassador of Suffering," with giggles. He would grin, pat their head and say, "Yes, children, suffering is the only true ambassador." But when night fell and the compound was quiet, Chike sat alone in the candle glow, his body aching, his chest heavy, yet his pride unbroken. It happened one afternoon. Chike was returning from Uselu market, pushing a wheelbarrow of firewood because he insisted on cooking with it instead of using his gas cylinder. Under the burning sun, his legs trembled. Sweat drenched his clothes. He dropped the barrow at the roadside, gasping. A crowd gathered quickly. "Ambassador, are you okay?" a trader asked. Chike tried to smile but only coughed violently. His knees buckling. He collapsed on the dusty road. They rushed him to the nearby clinic. The doctors scolded him after examination. "You are overworking your body. Your lungs are weak. Your blood pressure is high. If you continue like this, you will kill yourself." Chike smiled faintly, whispering, "Then let me die training myself." The doctor shook his head and muttered, "Stubborn man." After his collapse at Uselu market, Chike slowed down for a few weeks, but not enough. The clinic prescribed rest, balanced diet, and mild medication. He ignored it all. "Suffering is my cure," he told the curious neighbors. But his body was no longer listening. His cough grew harsher. His knees ached constantly, and his once bright eyes now seemed dim. Yet he refused every offer of help. When a church welfare committee tried to donate money for his treatment, he returned it. When his sister Ngozi offered to take him to Abuja for care, he said, "Let me remain in the classroom of suffering until I graduate." The truth was that Chike's philosophy had crossed into pride. He was too far in, too branded by ambassador of suffering to return back. Desperate for income after months of unemployment, he took a small contract from a neighbor to deliver farm produce to a village in Owan. It was a very tedious job, requiring travel across rough roads. The neighbor suggested hiring a bus, but Chike refused. He loaded everything onto his faithful bicycle and set off at dawn. The road was merciless. Rain turned the red soil to mud. The bicycle tires sank repeatedly, and Chike's body screamed in protest. He pushed on, coughing, sweating, muttering to himself, "Suffering is strength, suffering is strength." By the time he reached the village, his lips were pale, his breath shallow. He handed over the goods, smiled weakly, and collapsed by the roadside. The villagers rushed him into their health center, but the nurse shook his head after examination. His lungs were failing. His blood was weak. This man has been abusing his body for years, she whispered. Chike returned to Benin weaker than ever. Neighbors now looked at him not with laughter but pity. The once proud ambassador of suffering became a shadow, limping through the compound, coughing into rags, barely able to paddle his bicycle. One evening, the children who used to chant his nickname gathered quietly by his window. They no longer shouted, they only peeped, whispering, "Ambassador is sick." That night, by candlelight, Chike sat on his bed, staring at his calloused palms. For the first time, the pride drained from his eyes. He whispered to himself, maybe Kunle was right. Maybe Ngozi was right. Maybe I have mistaken pride for discipline. He thought of all the opportunities lost, the jobs, the friendships, the love he rejected, the comfort he never tasted. He thought of the endless road of suffering he had walked and how it led only to loneliness and weakness. Tears filled his eyes, the first time he had shed in years. I was suffering like a crown, he whispered, but it has broken me instead. A week later, one quiet dawn, the compound stirred with cries. Chike had passed in his sleep. The candle by his side burned into wax. At his burial in Abo, the family and few friends stood soberly. Kunle, who came from Lagos, shook his head as he spoke. Chike was a man of conviction, but conviction without balance is destruction. He chose suffering as his teacher, but suffering became his master. Let us learn from him. Life is already hard. Wisdom is not to multiply pain, but to manage it with grace. And so, the man who called himself the ambassador of suffering became a warning. His story spread not only as example to copy, but as a lesson to remember.